Well, last time we spoke about Oliver Ekman-Larsson, it was in a video talking about the Arizona Coyotes and highlighting how because of their whole situation, let's just say, they got draft picks taken away, they got their best player, or at least one of their best players, in Taylor Hall, probably leaving. They're in a position where many people are saying, you know what, it is probably, if not almost entirely, time to rebuild. That's the video wherein we spoke about the idea of trading Oliver Ekman-Larsson, a 29-year-old defender, the captain of the Coyotes, a guy who is indeed making $8.25 million until 2027. Yikes, that's a big contract. Until the guy is 36 years old, he is going to be making $8.25 million a season. Well, at the end of the day, Oliver Ekman-Larsson is a guy who indeed is still a capable NHL defender. He's been on the decline a little bit year after year. He certainly isn't the same 55-point defenseman he was back in 2016, but instead he is a 40, 30-ish caliber point defenseman instead. Still a guy who is a very good leader, though, and indeed the captain of the Coyotes. So, we had ourselves a recent segment on TSN's Insider Trading, talking about two different teams that are actually apparently interested in the Swedish left-handed D-man. Let's go over to NHL Watcher's Twitter account and take a look at what Darren Dreger ended up saying. He says the Edmonton Oilers and the Arizona Coyotes have had preliminary talks about Oliver Ekman-Larsson. Dreger adds, it won't be an easy deal to make for Ken Holland. The Boston Bruins are also in the mix. Dreger reminds everyone that OEL has trade protection, and he will manage this process to some degree. Because again, if a guy has a no-move clause like Oliver Ekman-Larsson does indeed have, he has the opportunity to say no anytime the GM of the Coyotes decides, okay, it's time for you to move, either via trade to another team or up and down to the Tucson Roadrunners in the AHL. But this little tweet right here kind of goes over it all. The Oilers and the Bruins, ladies and gentlemen, are here on the Coyotes captain talks. And in fact, it's not even just these two. Let's take a look at what Elliotte Friedman said on Sportsnet 650. And yeah, you kind of know where we're going with this, right? Sportsnet 650, that's the Vancouver local radio station. He said this, I do think the Vancouver Canucks have had an Oliver Ekman-Larsson conversation. I don't know if it's possible, but I do think they talked to Arizona. It might just be a thing you call to ask and find out. So, first off, because everybody's already been talking about the Bruins and the Oilers, let's go over my Vancouver Canucks first and talk about the perspective of them having a discussion for Oliver Ekman-Larsson. No. Straight up, just no. $8.25 million is a lot, man. You thought we didn't have cap problems now, when Elias Pettersson and Quinn Hughes are making entry-level money. You think you don't have cap problems now, but you just wait until you have an Oliver Ekman-Larsson signed until 2027 at 8.25 until he's going to be 36 years old, and then you have the Petey, the Hughes contracts coming into effect with the cap not rising, and yeah, we're still going to have Louis for a few years. I know he's going to expire soon, but still. This Vancouver Canucks team, in my opinion, is doing just what Elliotte Friedman said, and that is only a conversation. It's no serious thought, it's no serious trade proposal, it's just a conversation. Calling up the brand new GM in Arizona and saying, hey man, Jim Benning here. What would it take to get Ekman-Larsson? Not even just proposing a trade, just gauging the market and understanding what the price is. That is kind of the job of Jim Benning. So I honestly feel okay that he is doing this, at least according to Elliotte Friedman. He has indeed made a call. But I will say, if you're able to get an Oliver Ekman-Larsson somehow, and you do it with salary retained too, I would not be opposed to watching Elias Pettersson and Oliver Ekman-Larsson do things on this Vancouver Canucks power play with Quinn Hughes too, mind you. You would be in a position where Ekman-Larsson would probably even be on the second unit just because Quinn Hughes is so good at quarterbacking a power play in general. I like having my Super Swedes on this team, and you know Vancouver has a very storied history with the Super Swedes themselves, from Sundstrom to Gradin to Olin to the Sedins to Naslund to Samuelsson to Edler to Lack to Markstrom. You love seeing this, not to mention Louis Eriksson, Oscar Fentenberg, and the like. This team loves its Swedes, so having another one, that'd be pretty cool. However, going over onto the other two teams, because this is only a conversation we've had about Vancouver, there are still two other teams here. The Edmonton Oilers, they're a team that we actually did discuss the possibility of Oliver Ekman-Larsson going to before. It was that big rumor package video talking about Jake DeBrusk and Matt Murray too. Oddly enough, those rumors don't seem to have died down. But Oliver Ekman-Larsson is in a position where the Edmonton Oilers already kind of have a pretty nice blue line. Their top four consists of Ethan Bear, Darnell Nurse, you have Oscar Klefbom, and you have Adam Larsson. Adam Larsson hasn't really been all too great this year. He was kind of battling some stuff on and off. We kind of know he wasn't his best this most previous season. But we also noted about how earlier there was a little bit of a discussion as to whether or not the Oilers would even be interested in trading away some of their D-men among that pool of top four guys to make room for a Broberg or a Bouchard. And that is a completely separate idea that kind of contradicts the notion that they would want to go after an Ekman-Larsson and seriously consider making a deal. Not to mention, the Oilers are a team that, while they do have some expensive players in McDavid and Draisaitl, etc., who knows how willing they would be to add another one who's making $8.25 million. If you're able to get him on salary retained, then sure, that'd be cool. But I don't know how willing the Coyotes would actually be to retain salary on a contract that goes on for 7 more years. That just doesn't really feel right. As for the Oilers, though, if they're indeed bringing in another super Swede like Ekman-Larsson, and they use this guy as a model for Philip Broberg to come into the organization and say, okay, look, this guy, Ekman-Larsson, you learn how he plays hockey and how he's able to evaluate the ice, because this is the kind of guy who you need to learn from when it comes to offensive defensemen who can lead transitions and who can break the puck in themselves. Ekman-Larsson kind of knows how to do that. I mean, he was better at it before, but still, that's kind of the profile that Philip Broberg wants to replicate, while also having another added aspect of being the guy who is able to take the puck in and rush it to the net himself. As for the Boston Bruins, well, this is an interesting one, because if the Bruins are not able to re-sign a Torrey Krug for something that would be equal to or less than $8.25 million, that's the only reality wherein I see a move like this actually making sense. Because if you want a nice, offensively minded left-handed D-man who can quarterback a power play, you have that in Krug. Just sign the guy to a cheaper deal than $8.25. I don't really know if he's going to be able to ask anything above that anyway. So, to me, if you're going to take a look at it and say, okay, Krug is not going to come back. Krug has indeed made his decision. He is going elsewhere. He is going to Detroit or something. Then that's when I feel it is possible to actually make a valid Ekman-Larsson trade. There was actually a rumor going around earlier that, I think it was yesterday, the Bruins would trade Krug's rights for a draft pick or something because they weren't able to re-sign him. Something like that. So unless it's finally confirmed that Krug leaves and he's not a part of your organization anymore, which, who knows, by the time this video is uploaded, that very well might be the case, I think that's the only opportunity that actually makes sense for a Bruins team to go after Ekman-Larsson. And even still, $8.25 million, that's quite a lot. As for what the Coyotes would actually want, well, we've already noted it in a few other videos that maybe draft picks and prospects would be up their alley, because with Taylor Hall leaving, Phil Kessel not really being all too great, Darcy Kemper potentially on the block, and Ekman-Larsson too, there certainly is an idea here that says that the Coyotes could be entering rebuild mode sooner rather than later. And if any of these teams, Vancouver, Edmonton, or Boston, are the teams that help them out, then I'd be really interested in seeing what exactly that return is and the magnitude of it. Because yeah, Ekman-Larsson is good. He's literally their captain. It's not just like a first is going to get this done. You're going to have to get a big package out there. So if you're a fan of any of these teams, Boston, Edmonton, or Vancouver, let me know in the comments, would you want an Ekman-Larsson on your squad? And if so, what would be the max you would be willing to give up? And discuss whether or not salary retained is an issue there, because I know for me personally, it certainly would be, because this guy's making a boatload of money until 2027. Talk to me in the comments what you think. I hope you enjoyed this video. So that's Trollus 99. And bye.